The
Dakota Fair
experience.
But I think from what I understand about,
So
Well, you're wrong because my feelings dictate the facts in this matter.
are you getting to a free
here's
speech?
so here's two science articles that talk about why nuclear energy is cool, but to more important stuff. So, Bernie Sanders, and specifically, has denounced nuclear energy as a false solution, which should be phased out by an unspecific date. Elizabeth Warren kind of mum about it. AOC leaves the door open in terms of Green New Deal. And one more statistic that I thought was interesting, and then you guys can just talk. 8% of Democrats support nuclear energy, while 22% of Republicans.
All right, can I say something? I'd like you to pull up an article on Andrew Yang's climate climate plan, and you'll see that nuclear energy. He's one of the few Democrats that nuclear energy is a cornerstone of his climate change plan. So you see, not only is nuclear energy a cornerstone of his plan, but modern age nuclear reactors are safer and more fuel efficient than those old nuclear reactors. Old nuclear reactors.
Dakota's not even listening to what Luca's saying. Just pulling up Andrew Yang polling data.
So Andrew Yang's polling at 3%.
Yeah.
So he's sixth in this.
No, he's gotten several polls up put up. So one thing you need to understand about Andrew Yang,
Political
this debate, this election cycle is far from decided, right? You might think that his plan is not indicative of what the Democrats want, and it's not, because he's not an established Democrat. But with his rise, you can see that there is a desire for a politician who incorporates nuclear energy. You can see in his plan, it's very, very well thought out. Bernie, I like a lot of things about Bernie, but I didn't know that he thought it was a false positive. That's news to me.
I guess there's two things I have to ask Dakota. First off is I don't think anyone at this table is an opponent of nuclear energy. So if you want, at least as far as I know, so it's not. I don't think there's gonna be much of an argument about the efficacy of nuclear energy. I think the second.
My real question is,
if I can just finish what I'm saying.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
So the second part is that I also don't think that nuclear energy is a factor that people think about very much when it comes to these types of things. I think that it falls into one of those knee-jerk political areas that a lot of Democrat or left-leaning people just knee-jerk respond negatively, and Republicans almost have a tribal opposite response to it because it's viewed as a left-wing issue to be anti-nuclear energy. It's viewed as a right-wing issue to be pro-nuclear energy.
Okay.
And so that's where the polling data comes from. I think that those, though the majority, if you can pull the polling data up again, I would be interested to see what percent of those people would list it as one of their top issues, and then would vote along party lines with a candidate who was against or in favor.
Right. So that's why actually this Vox article was good. It showed that 92% of Democrats support clean energy, so some kind of climate change solutions, while only 27% of Republicans. So I just thought it was interesting to look at that divide of then how some, because obviously if you're eliminating nuclear, you're looking at wind and solar, basically.
Because really what that is explaining is it's all about the way you phrase the question, right? Because if you made the exact same question but you said energy independence was the way you phrase it, you get a different knee-jerk response from people who don't have a strong opinion on it. Because there are going to be a group of people who care a lot about nuclear energy, and they're going to have an informed opinion on it. But the majority of people including myself, know very little about nuclear energy, and their response to nuclear energy is going to be informed mostly by their political leanings. And so the way you ask the question, clean energy, nuclear energy, energy independence, they're really all very similar questions, but the way you ask the question informs the way that people have their response to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's a really well thought out position.
So yeah.
Okay. My real just I guess question what you guys think. Why do you think that some of these Democrats that are out there proposing large bills AOC said she leaves the door open, but Bernie Sanders says no way. Why do you think politicians that are very vocal about climate change want to oppose it or do oppose it? Do you think it's just not enough information? Do you think?
Can I take a hit on this one? I think this is the vestiges of the hippie movement, right? The anti-Vietnam movement and the peace no love movement. that happen. You know,
The peace, no love movement.
peace,
Make love,
no.
not war. You
Peace-
Yes,
Sorry.
the love, peace, hate.
The,
no sex movement.
No, you know what I meant. You know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
I'm thinking about hippies putting flowers on the right police's barrels of the gun. Right. This is the vestiges of that. And Bernie, he's an old fella. You know that was I don't know, but it very well may be ingrained in his mind that nuclear bad, right? And he might just not be informed. AOC, I think it's good that she says, she'll leave the door open to it because she, as you know, she's very, influenced by Bernie Sanders. So I think that's why. And for people who are younger, like Biden and them, I think it's just an issue that they don't want to tackle because, again, Democrats think it's like almost in like the Democratic culture, like, ooh, nuclear, like, oh no, that's bad, right? Because from the anti-Vietnam era.
It's simpler. It's just that it's easier to look at renewable sources like solar and wind and say like these are clean. These aren't going to explode like a nuclear like nuclear power plants. So like the three disasters that have happened so far. Like the two of them weren't even that bad. There was like Chernobyl was really bad. Like obviously, but
3 Mile Island.
yeah, 3 Mile Island was
Fukushima.
It just
Fukushima.
but like compared to like other like natural or disasters with energy like oil spills and all this other energy that we have, or like we talked about before, that mining for the materials for like solar panels and stuff is like super bad for the environment, like just as bad as like almost as bad as like oil and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean I think that like that goes back to like the point that like I think obviously very few of these people have like extremely thought out proposals on like the actual climate footprint of the things that they want. What they're doing is like they're going off of people that they trust's opinion on these things, and for the last however long since like the 1980s when 3 Mile happened, like the Democrat position on nuclear energy has in general been to regulate more heavily and to phase out in the long run, right? And so then these are like the authorities that they trust to tell them the truth about things that are worth investing in have been telling them that nuclear energy is not a viable solution, and so they don't support it. In the same way that like they've been told for so long that solar energy is a viable solution, and so whatever the actual evidence is, and from what I understand it, like solar energy is still pretty good, even if there are some downsides. But like whatever the actual evidence is, they don't care because it's the authorities who have been telling them and who they trust have been telling them that it's good, right? And so, and plus nuclear energy, like you said, it has like these like big like headline moments,
Yeah.
right? Like it has like 3 Mile, it has Fukushima, it has Chernobyl, and then even more than that, you have like the Iran deal, and so it gets caught up in a lot of politics, a lot of like big headline events, in a way that like solar energy doesn't, wind energy doesn't. Like yeah,
Would you say it has bigger ups and downs? So it has bigger ups as in good things, as in nuclear energy produces a ton of energy for the amount of resources that it requires, and is very efficient, and we're making it work cleaner and cleaner. At the very bottom of the barrel, like the disasters we've had, Chernobyl for example, that's really really bad, and then everywhere in between. Well, solar, no one's like, man, I got this really cool solar panel today. Like,
I had a solar panel, but it exploded. Now I have to evacuate North Ukraine, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
yeah.
So there's not like that high, and then the low is cloudy today.
And
Like
like
there's no big low.
Like to me, the best evidence that it's like such a cultural thing is like France. I believe that close to like 70% of their electrical output is generated by nuclear energy, and France is like one of the most left-wing countries in the West, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like they have very little cultural resistance to nuclear, as far as I'm aware,
Mhm.
and I could be wrong. But then you have other countries like Germany, which they've been phasing out their nuclear program under Angela Merkel's like new energy policy, and it's I think it's so much of a cultural thing. Has France been phasing it out recently, or?
I was trying to remember. I knew that they're closing 14 nuclear reactors by 2030 on this website. But I don't remember. I remember reading something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
know. I don't know if they were closing these because they were old and they were trying to move towards.
Yeah, so they're
better
trying to
You
reactors.
see here that quote that he has. It says reducing the role of nuclear energy does not mean renouncing it. So it might just be that those are old reactors.
Right.
and trying to shift to like quote unquote even more renewable sources, right?
Yeah.
So like
Mhm.
sources that aren't reliant on mining or nuclear power. Yeah.
Very interesting. Do you have any final thoughts on nuclear energy?
I guess what's your stance on it, Dakota? You're the host of the Dakota Ferris event, so what is your thought process on nuclear?
From every Joe Rogan show I've seen, Joe Rogan's supposed to get his mind blown. So I guess my mind's been blown now. That's always the catch line. Joe Rogan gets his mind blown by
Yeah.
so and so.
You're gonna start clipping it up now and putting the Joe Rogan Experience clips.
But I'm certainly think nuclear energy is certainly a solution that needs to be pursued, and that it definitely has a future. I think should have a future and continue to have a future in energy, because as technology continues to get better, it gets more efficient. We get cleaner waste coming from it. We get more energy from it. We use less resources from it. But the biggest issue with it is there's two biggest issues. One's bigger than the other, but bigger in different ways. Is that obviously when it goes bad, it goes real bad. Like solar, if it goes bad, we just wasted a bunch of money maybe on solar panels that, I don't know, don't work or break, whatever's wrong with the solar panels, right? Or a wind turbine, whatever's wrong with the wind turbine. When nuclear plants go bad, they explode, and it's very bad. The other big issue with nuclear plants, it's a big upfront cost. One article I was reading, it's like $230 million to renew your license once it expires. And it's like $400 million to get the plant up and running. It's to bare minimums. So it's that big upfront cost that is one of the biggest factors.
So that's using technology from, it might as well be ancient times by now, right? So if you pull up on the computer, like new age nuclear reactors.
Are they using like crystals and shit to power it?
No. So what they do is they encase the nuclear material in a ceramic ball, and it makes it fail-proof. Like nuclear reaction, like.
Do you have a website that you were talking about?
I think
I saw a video from I want to say it was either Vox VOX
Yep.
or Vice. It
Weren't
was
you were specifically referring to like thorium reactors, right?
no, this is a different reactor.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is. That one, the fight to reinvent nuclear power. And if you see there, it's a startup in America that can create a micronuclear reactor that can power an entire town or city at a fraction of the cost. Why? Because this is a private company doing it versus a public-private partnership, which is what these giant monstrosities of a nuclear reactor were back in the day. Like I think it's analogous to SpaceX going to space at a fraction of the cost it costed NASA to go to space back in the day, right? Because they're just more efficient. So of course it's going to be monumentally insane of a cost and monumentally insane of a danger because
You need to click the audio thing.
It's old technology.
Oh, they're just talking about it. They don't show.
No, they do. It might be in the beginning then. It was a ceramic case, I remember. Here, just scrub through. This might be the wrong video.
Okay, we get the.
Maybe I'll pull it up.
That's okay.
We get the idea.
Okay, it was like explosion proof. Like it just couldn't happen. They submerge it in a pool of water, and it was probably a building about the size of this house. And
Because I guess that could solve one of the other major problems with nuclear energy that we haven't discussed yet, which is the threat of terrorist attacks and stuff like that, where nuclear energy is such a, like you said, such an explosive thing that can just go so wrong that if you have these nuclear power plants all over the place, you magnify the risk of some type of attack on them. Whether it's internal or external or terrorists or invasion or whatever. You have some case where if someone drops a bomb on a nuclear reactor, I don't think we've ever had that happen before. We don't know what would happen. And the evidence is that it doesn't take very much for something 3 Mile to happen. What would happen if someone was purposely trying to make?
Well, isn't
a reactor
the new, because the old failsafe in Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island was that it required power to keep it cool, but the new system that they've done since the late 80s, early 90s it's passive cooling.
Mm-hmm.
If power gets killed, it
slowly goes down.
It cools it. It requires no power to keep it cooled.
Yeah.
And actually taking out the power shuts a door or something. I forget exactly what it is. It cools it.
It's a belt. So right,
Yeah.
so they're on a belt. At least the reactor that I'm talking about. So the uranium is encased in ceramic, right? Like the clay. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
It's ceramics.
Ceramic.
Ceramic sounds way cooler. Though. It sounds like
It's-
pneumatics.
All right, so the clay shit, right? It's in place in a clay ball, and it's on like a belt, and when the power shuts off, it switches automatically, and they stop going through, and they automatically. So here's the way to think of it: it requires energy to keep it hot.
Right.
Without
That's- yeah,
any
that's what I was trying
input,
to say.
it'll cool down. So, and that being paired with it being submerged makes it really, really safe. Now, I don't know if a bomb were to be dropped on it, if it would survive, or like a terrorist attack or something. You know, that's something, of course, that like the private industry could work on.
Yeah.
I
But-
feel like that's like just like one of those like what ifs. Like you'd also probably drop a bomb on an oil factory and it'll also explode.
Saudi Arabia has entered the chat
Yeah.
with like their
Yeah, so like it seems like also dangerous. So it just
Yeah.
seems like one of those ridiculous things that we're just like
What if a
like
meteor
trying to
falls on
like
it?
like set
Right.
walls that we have to pass. Like we don't need to be worrying about.
And I
stuff
feel like
that.
that's like this like classic example of like the modern way that we view things, and I'm gonna blame like our school system, big moment here, of like always like having to come up with like counter arguments.
Yeah.
Is that we always feel like nothing can be like uncaveatedly like pretty good. Like there always needs to be like an equally strong argument for why we can't do it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, nuclear energy has all these benefits to it, so we have to start coming up with reasons that nuclear energy doesn't work. Like you said, like terrorist attacks, or like I brought up, or like 3 Mile or whatever, because it's like you can't just have something that's be good. You have to present the counter arguments as well.
It's good.
Cool.
Good point.
Yeah.
I don't know why the Democrats they need to get their head out of the ass, dude. I mean, nuclear's the way of the future.
Yeah, I like that. Andrew Yang's in favor of it.
Uh-huh.
It's a good thing that he likes.